Today we're building this wood spirit birdhouse, and yes, these are ones that can sell for upwards of $100. All right, so for today's project, what you're gonna need is you're gonna need something to cut with, miter saw, bandsaw. You can do a lot of this by hand too, of course. You're gonna need something to sand with, and you're gonna need something to carve with. Okay, I use my Dremel and a grinder for this, but Dremel gets away just fine. You could do it just with a grinder, but you're gonna have to be pretty good at it. You can also use chisels if you want. I'm just not very good at them. Now, for your cut list, here's what you're gonna need. You're gonna take your fence picket, 5.5 inches wide. You're gonna give me a 13-inch piece full width. You're gonna give me two 5 3/4 length by 4.5 inches. That's gonna make up the side of the birdhouse. It's gonna have a little vent gap in there, so all of you can stop commenting about it needing venting. We're gonna have that here. You're gonna give me an 8.5 inch long, and you're gonna rip it down on the sides to 4.5 inches. That's gonna make up the back. Then you're gonna give me an 8-inch full width piece. Then you're going to give me another 8-inch, 5-inch wide piece. That's going to make the two tops of the roof here. One of them is a 1/2 inch, a little narrower, so that way they overlap and end at the same spot. Then just have a 2 by 3 inch piece of scrap, and that's going to kind of make up the nose. There we go. We got our cuts all set. The first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to glue the nose on to the front of what's going to be the face, okay? I just use glue. I don't use nails because we're going to end up grinding away most of it. So it's pretty simple. Glue it, clamp it, leave it sit there for 30, 45 minutes. And where you're going to put this, mark down 2 inches from the top, right? And then give yourself a center line, so about 2 3/4. And that's going to be the top center of where your nose wants to sit. You can clamp it, or you can just put something heavy on it and just let it sit there on the side of your shop for a few. So starting with the piece that's going to make up the back, this is the one that's 8.5 inches long by 4.5 inches wide. What you're going to do is you're going to make a mark in the center here, because what we're going to do is we're going to put a 45-degree cut on both sides here, and that's where the roof is going to sit to. So mark me in the middle here, should be at 2 1/4. And then on your miter saw, just give me a cut on both sides. And then what I want you to do is mark 4 inches off the bottom, and you're going to give me a nice, clean, straight cut there, and that's going to make up the back panel that we can then remove off the birdhouse for cleanouts. So this is what you should have. You should have your back piece, which is cut in two now, so we can make an access panel. And there's going to be a little bit of a gap here, so we can allow for ventilation and for water to drain out the bottom. And then you're going to have your two side pieces here, which we're going to put on top of the back wall. Then you have your bottom piece that's going to sit here. Then you have your two roof pieces. They're going to sit on like that. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to assemble this bottom piece here. We're going to keep the roof separate because we're going to make some roof shingles out of that, and then we're going to put that on after we assemble this piece. So the way I like to do this, I like to take the bottom piece and the side walls and line these up. I'm going to glue them with Titebond 3 here, which is the waterproof stuff, and then brad nail them from the bottom, and then we're going to put the back on after that. And now for the back, remember, you're not going to glue on the door. Just place it there as a placeholder. Then you're going to glue on the top piece here. I would leave a little bit of a gap at the bottom and a tiny bit of a gap at the top. You know, you're talking 1/8 of an inch or less. And then, yeah, glue that top in so that way this can easily come off. Or you can put hinges on it if you wanted to. Be creative with it, but we're going to keep this one simple. There we have it so far. The back door is removable, and so at this point we can put some screws kind of in the backside, recess them a little bit, or you can put kind of a hinge and clasp system on there. Again, keeping this one simple, so we're just going to do a couple of recess screws into the back. Should have marked the centers at 2 inches on both sides just to make it look nice and neat. Before we start working on the face, the fun part, we are going to take our roof and get this set up. Now, one of these is 1/2 inch shorter, right? So we can just line it up and overlap them. We're not doing a miter cut or anything dumb like that on the top. we're just going to overlap one side. And the reason why one of the sides is shorter is so that way the bottoms line up when you put it on the birdhouse. Now, what I want you to do is brad nail these together, okay? So that way they're even. And then you're going to mark in 1.5 inches on the bottom, okay? All right, like so. Now, we're going to make a curve going all the way up to the top there. Now, you can use the fancy, handy-dandy, curvature tool that I've shown you in other videos if you want to make it absolutely perfect. This one's pretty simple, though. We're just going to freehand it. So that's what my cut's going to look like, right? It's a little more vertical than it is curved, right at the start. So kind of is going to make this little overhang. Then you're going to go to your favorite curvature cutting tool, whether that be a jigsaw, a handsaw, coping saw, crying out loud, a grinder, take a razor blade to this stuff, whatever the heck you got to do. I'm going to use my bandsaw. It should look something like this. So then you're just going to unpry these things, take out your brad nails, and then we are going to glue these together, the short side on the bottom, remember? And no, these peaks are not going to line up exactly, but that's okay. So we're about to take the grinder to this thing, and we're about to smooter it right up. Now, yes, you can take a square to this and line it up and get all fancy with it. What I have found is that if it's not perfectly 90 degrees, which even if you use a square, it's not going to be, when you put it on the birdhouse, it's going to kind of form into shape either way. So I don't worry about it too much, folks. Just line the backs of them up, line it up as good as you can, pop some nails in. I actually like to give this part a decent sanding and start to round off the curves and everything because it's just easier to get to before you put the roof on. And can you sand all of this before you start the project? No. All right, so at this point in the build, you should have the main structure of your birdhouse. You should have your roof, which we are not going to attach yet. We are going to wait until the face is done so it can all go together nicely. And then we're going to work on the shingles on the roof. Then you should have your front piece here. Now, first thing we need to do is we need to cut a 45 in the top. So again, I'm going to need you to mark at the middle point, which should be about 2 3/4 on a board that's 5.5 inches wide. And then you're going to give me 45-degree cut, just like we did on that back piece. This is where your creativity really comes into play, okay? There are a million different ways you can do this. And basically, we're creating a face, but we're going to start really simple. And I'm going to explain it the best that I can. Now, what I like to do to start off with is just kind of draw what's going to be roughly where the eyes are, kind of where the nose and cheeks are going to be, and then, where the mouth is. We're going to drill that out now. And then I'm going to draw some lines for where the beard is. And we're going to make some notches kind of on the outside of it first. Bandsaw, scroll saw, jigsaw, handsaw, whatever the heck you got. And then we're going to pull out the Dremel and we're going to start carving into this thing. Be patient with it. At first it might take you an hour or two to do this next part of it. But as you get faster, this will break down to 20 to 30 minutes for you. All right, so first things first, let's just go ahead and drill out the access hole for the birds. Now, for this, size-wise, look at the link in the description below, and you're going to have a chart there on the different bird holes for the different types of birds. This one's going to be mostly for wrens and chickadees. So you're just going to mark the center, and I'm going to butt that up fairly close to where the nose is, maybe about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch below where the bottom of the nose is going to be, is where the top of my bird hole is going to be. Now, from here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to mark basically 2 lines here towards the top of the bridge of the nose, okay? So this is going to end up being your nose, right? I just do a very loose drawing of it because it's going to change, folks, right? I make 2 lines for where the eyes are going to be, okay? And then I make a couple of other lines up top. These are going to kind of be the eyebrows, and then he's got a wrinkly forehead, okay? So it's roughly just like that, just making lines, okay? Now from here, I'm going to make some swooshes for the cheeks, right? And your cheeks are going to line up, roughly to the edge of where your mouth is, right? So there's one swoosh. There's another swoosh. And so we're going to grind down, we're going to take out a lot of material in this section, right? And then these are going to be puffy looking, right? They're going to be cheeks. Okay, then I'm going to just make a few lines above the mouth. That's going to be the mustache. And then below here, I'm just going to make like what's going to look like a bottom lip. Okay, so I'm just making a little bit of a curve, right? Okay, so that's what we got so far. He looks goofy. He'll come together though, trust me. And then from here, I'm just going to make some lines for the beard. Now, you can be creative here and you can make it look like the wind's pushing it all one direction or the other. Or you can make big grooves in the end here if you want it kind of funky looking. But I just start with drawing lines from the bottom of the cheek, right, and close to the lip, down board, right? And just make them swooshy, wavy. Don't have to be perfect here, right? As you're going to see, it all falls apart once you start to make some cuts, okay? All right, there we kind of have it. He's a little funky looking. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the bandsaw and I'm going to start from below the cheek area, okay? So this part's really important here. What you want to do is you want to measure the birdhouse, which this is going to be the front, right? And so this is about 6 1/4 inches off the side. This is about 8 1/2 inches from the top of the birdhouse to the bottom plate. What you want to make sure of is when this sits on here, you're not removing too much material this way, so that way the birdhouse is exposed, okay? So you want to make sure that this is lined up decently, okay? And yeah, you can just line it up, right? And then I make a mark at where the bottom of the birdhouse is. So that way I don't remove too much material in this section, right? I've only got about a 1/2 inch to work with on each side based on how this birdhouse is built, because it kind of overhangs a little bit, and this is made by design, right? So that way you can cut out some beard hairs, right, in this section, but I like to know where it is. So now down here, from here below, I have free reign to cut as high as I want, okay? So let's go to the bandsaw, and I'll show you what I mean. There you have it. So these are going to be kind of the edges of the beard. And you can get really funky with this, right? Have fun with it. There's no wrong way to do it. All right, so now we're going to start to remove a lot of material from his face here and carve it out. For this, what I like to use is Dremel. I've got the hand extension thing. You don't need it. And this burring tool, okay? See if you can see that properly. So this is by Cutsall. They make a whole set of them. I'll have a link in the description below. And you can use what you like and what you're comfortable here. I've found the absolute best. They have this shaped burring tool, which is kind of a little bit more straight edged. They've got a long and narrow one. They've got a purely ball one. They got that one if you want to make finer lines in the beard. But the ones that I've found to work the best is just their kind of acorn-shaped one here. And they last a long time. I mean, I've done dozens and dozens of these, and it still works just fine. For this part, mask. Wear it. Trust me. If you have a vacuum, or some sort of dust collection, set it up next to it. It helps a lot. Even if it's only collecting 50% of it, you're going to create a ton of dust here. Garage door open, fans going, the whole bit. Like, protect yourself during this part because you're going to create a lot of dust. So I always start off with getting rid of a lot of the material around the nose. And you're going to find that the bit digs in occasionally, but you just got to go with it. So I'm just trying to get a rough shape of the nose here because that's going to help me with the eye placement and where the beard starts and pretty much everything else. So a little bit of a slow growing process because you are removing quite a bit of material on this. I mean, you're removing more than 50% of that block that we added to it for the nose. And I will apologize for having to cut away there, but my head was in the shot the whole time, so I didn't have any usable footage. But I went in and ground down the eyes really heavily, not all the way through the material, but good 3/4 of the way through. And then I drew the cheek lines down right next to the nose, also pretty deep. And that helps us give a little bit more shape on where the nose is going to be. And then I kind of worked the nose, the edge of the nose, into where the cheek is going, and you just continue into shape. And, at some point, you pop in the nostril holes, which helps give it a little bit more form too. And you're just going through a lot and continuing to slowly remove materials. Then I went in and grounded out the eyebrows up there, not quite as deep as the eyes, and then just gave it one more line for where a wrinkle in the forehead would be. And then here I'm just kind of shaping up the cheeks. I'm kind of tapering it into the top of where the cheek will be, so it's kind of a nice rosy, puffy cheek there. And working down the edge of it a little bit so it's not such a clean cut on the very edge. I kind of like to round out all the edges on the outside of the face here too. And then I'm working that eye into the cheek as well. So it's kind of a 45-degree angle to where it works in with the cheek. And then doing the same thing on the cheek on the other side. Just working everything in slowly removing material, making those grooves a little bit deeper. Then I kind of flatten out all the edges. You're going to have sharp edges, and I just kind of go in with the burring tool at kind of a 45-degree angle and kind of soften up all the edges. Now here on the beard, this is where it gets fun. You just kind of find the path in the wood and you start drawing lines, right? And they kind of meet up at the little valleys that you cut with your bandsaw or jigsaw on the outside, and so it kind of starts to really take shape here. These are decently deep grooves, not as deep as the eyes are, but they're pretty deep. And so get those going through, and then I make a few cross cuts in the beard just to kind of, give it a little bit more shape there. And then I go through and I, again, kind of flatten out all those sharp edges from digging in really deeply on both edges. And then I take a little bit of the top material off just to know kind of where I've gone and smooth everything out all along those sharp edges there that you dug in. And just have fun with it, Remember, there's nothing you can't do that can't be fixed. It's a goofy little wood spirit birdhouse. And no matter how many I've made, each one has their own character and personality. Then I do go in and round out the back edges of them a little bit because remember, that is going to kind of be exposed. So depending on if you're making this for yourself or if you are planning on selling them, wrapping up those back edges is a nice little added touch to it. Just makes it look a little bit more professional. And then when you're all done, pretty much, you're going to go back and make a few little tweaks here and there in the eyes or the nose and kind of rounding out the outside of the nose just to give it a little bit more definition and make it a little bit more even. And then when I'm done with the carving part of it, I like to start by sanding it with something that I make here. It's a Dremel sander wheel, but then I take some sandpaper that comes on a wheel. Again, I'll have links in the description for it, that you just kind of cut and put together, two or three of them facing forward, one of them facing backwards. And it just makes this sanding wheel that can really get in those grooves nicely to kind of finish this piece off, because you're going to have a lot of rough edges inside all of those little valleys that you have on the face. Then I use these little wheels. They come in packages, a lot of them for like $7 or $8, and they're kind of a finer sanding that gets into all the grooves really well, but you're pretty much only going to get one use out of them. So at this point, your shop should be a total mess. You should have dust everywhere, and you should have the makings of a birdhouse, being the front, the house, and the roof. Now, what I did notice is when I did this, he seems pretty SpongeBob SquarePants-ish, right? He's really squared out. So I'm going to actually take my bandsaw real quick and kind of curve out a couple of these ends, sand it real quick, just kind of see how that looks in comparison. I like that. I just notched out a couple of them, kind of rounded it out just a touch, and yeah, he just isn't so square. Time to put this bad boy together. So we're going to take the bulk of the birdhouse here. I'm going to take the roof, and I'm going to line it up to the back. I'm going to glue it, and I'm going to put a couple of nails in here. Not too many, because you want to make sure that the front lines up as well with the face. Now, the front's going to be a little bit loose here. Actually, kind of looks cool just like that. But then we're going to take the front face, we're going to line it up, so that way your roof is pretty well square. That should fit in there fairly snugly. So go ahead, glue the top of your face here, line it up there, punch a few brad nails in, and then I'm also going to glue the front of the birdhouse for the face. And occasionally, you're going to miss. I done put a brad nail in my dude's cheek here. So I usually only put a couple on the cheek going front facing. Now we're going to put wood filler in that, so it'll be fine. But yeah, I kind of screwed up on this one, so it's no problem. I'm just going to back it out with some pliers here, pull that out, and put a different one in a little bit further back. Now, when put together, you should have venting here, because I know you guys like to let me know that you should vent it. But also, let's go ahead and put just a small 1/4-inch hole in the top here, just to make sure it does vent properly. All right, so we got our shape of the birdhouse, and you can be done here, totally, if you want. If you want it to look cooler and you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club, we're going to put some shingles in the roof here. Now, this is where our friend the grinder comes in. You can do this with the Dremel, totally up to you. The grinder is a little bit faster, and I'm comfortable with it. And I just have a sanding pad on here. Again, link in the description for pretty much everything I use. And we're just going to make a few wavy lines in the top. And we're going to go vertically on both sides. We're going to round everything out. We're going to get rid of that overlap hang in kind of the front here. And just kind of finish it up. If you wanted to draw lines on there, because lines make your life better, just go ahead. I usually like to do 3, maybe 2 on this side, because it's a little bit smaller. And maybe I'll do 3 on this side. And I'm just doing wavy lines. Woo. All right, so now we have shingles in, and what I did here is, I tapered kind of the edges down. I did my deep groove cut, and then I tapered down the edges there, and make sure, on these sides, you go over the lip there, you connect the top shingles, like kind of round out the front of it, And there's your roof. And now I just go through with any nail holes here and I kind of recess them if needed. You might have to do that on the roof. All right, I'm just taking some wood filler, some natural look to it, just real quickly. Fill in any holes from nails, which you got a couple up front in your face if you did it the same way I did. I'm going to fill in the ones on the roof. Now I'm going to give a quick sand to the roof because I like that look, but again, you really don't have to. It's totally up to you. And now for the best part of the whole project, putting on tung oil. Again, link in the description. And as one of my viewers so kindly pointed out, you can use linseed oil as well. However, tung oil is actually non-toxic to birds, so you don't have to wait for it to like cure or anything to put it out, and the birds won't mind it whatsoever. Now, we're not doing the insides of these things. We're just doing the outsides. But just an added little point there. Now, to be fair, you don't actually have to do anything on the outside. Cedar is naturally mold and insect repellent. It weathers really well. I mean, just think about your fence, right? How long has your fence been up, and how many times have you actually stained or, protected that thing? Never. And it's up there fine for 20 years. That's why I love building birdhouses out of cedar. They're super duper low maintenance, but I love the way tung oil makes it look. It just pulls out all the grain, deepens everything, and I love them more. But wait, there's more. So before we wrap this up, this one is flush on the back. This one isn't going to hang by chains, which you could totally do too just as easily. But pretty much every birdhouse I make, in case you're wondering, you can put basically a French cleat on the back. I take a scrap piece of cedar, right, and I cut a 45 into it. You can make it a little steeper if you want. You can make these a little bit bigger. You can do whatever the heck you want. Super simple process. And then basically I'm just going to attach one to the back of the birdhouse, and then you attach the other one face up on whatever surface you're, hanging this off of, and then they just kind of clip into place, just like you see in everybody's fancy wood shops where they have a French cleat system all over their walls and they're storing tools there instead of like all over the benches like us normal people. There you go. Now, whatever you put this other piece onto on your fence post, whatever, it'll just sit there and boom, it just attaches right on. I love how that tung oil just pulls out all the grain. And I mean, these things look really cool. So at craft fairs, and you can go ahead and look up on Etsy right now, you're going to see these range anywhere from 75 up to about 150, 175 bucks, depending on how detailed and how intensive you get it. I do like to make these a lot of times with the thicker roofs on them, right? And actually the thicker cedar front that's about 1 inch or so. I can just get deeper into the grooves. So if you want to up your game a little bit, that's an easy way to do it. They look really, really cool. I want to do them in the future for you. I just wanted to build one for you that was fully out of a cedar fence picket because, again, it's so inexpensive, right? $4 for an entire cedar fence picket. You can make a full one out of these and you still have some left over. These are just super low risk because you're going to screw up, right? I screw up all the time. It happens, and I'm not wasting $5-10 per cut. I'm wasting 50 cents to $1. So check these out on Etsy. Craft fairs, depending on where I'm at, I would sell these between 75 to 125. And if you want to see how much fancier you can get, right, this is done out of a 1x8 super wide beard on that, a little bit more expression in the face. The roof is made with the 1x, so a bit thicker there. I've got the hinges on the back there, just kind of a little bit of an upgrade. So I'm going to make a few variations of these in the future, but this thing is big. I mean, this is not small, but you can do a lot of really fun stuff with it. I'm getting better at the faces, and I'm going to try to show you guys some different looks to that in the future here, so stay tuned. Now, if the wood spirit birdhouse isn't exactly your thing, don't worry. That's why I put together this video. These are some of my favorite birdhouses to build.